So what is the connection between beer and food?
You know, I think one thing that, you know, people have been doing wine dinners literally for decades now. And I think people just don't realize that beer is more versatile. The flavor spectrum of different beer profiles is just huge. And I mean, people now are starting to understand that you can pair craft beer with any dish in the world. And there's so many different styles that it's very fun to find either complementary flavors or contrasting flavors. But the bridge between beer and food is just a whole different flavor experience. And you know, I'm very blessed that in my role here at Founders, I work with some of the best chefs in the world. Because a lot of these chefs are just getting into craft beer. And so this is fun for them. And then I get to work with these chefs that are pretty high profile. Mm-hmm. And because of our status in the industry, and we have a pretty good distribution network right now, we get to just do these phenomenal dinners. It's amazing I'm not 500 pounds right now.
Do you think that the craft and food, or the craft beer and food industry and pairing has been taken off because the craft beer market has taken off so well? I mean, it really is hard to pair anything with Budweiser because it's so bad, but you know, that's just my opinion.
Well, I really think it's a matter of that there's so many beer styles that are so versatile. And I think the craft beer industry is getting a lot of attention right now, the attention that it deserves. And you know, back in '97 when we started this brewery, we kept saying this is the future. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the high-end restaurants now they understand that. Now they're looking at craft beer as, you know, where the wine industry was in the '70s. And you know, these restaurants, especially a lot of the restaurants that are really going, you know, farm to table. I think the consumer is better educated now, and so they're understanding. They want to know what's going in their body, and if they know that it's a craft brewer, you know, with the internet now, people can do research and they can say, oh, this is a great brewery, and these guys brew great porters and stouts, or this brewery does a great job with their IPAs and their hop forward beers. And so people are going into these restaurants now. And, you know, they can do their research before they show up. I know every time my wife and I go out for dinner, we always cheat. We always go to their website, look at their menu, and say, oh, I mean, it's fun. You know?
It is.
There's a sense of anticipation. And then when you get to the restaurant and they say, oh, today's special is yada, yada, yada. And then you go, I already knew exactly what I was going to order. But,
until then.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, pairing beer and food is just it's just a different flavor experience. Definitely. And something that everyone should experience. You know, one of the things I always say to everyone is introduce craft beer to a friend, because it will change their life. And also, you know, I'm not naive to the fact that a lot of people haven't been introduced to craft beer. And typically, Founders isn't the beer that people cut their teeth on. You know. People typically will go from a domestic beer into more of a red ale, maybe a Sam Adams, and then they go into a regional brand, and then ultimately, you know, they get to beers that are really full of flavor. Most people don't go from drinking Budweiser to, you know, Centennial IPA. No. Yeah, there's a progression, but what it tells me is that we've got years and years of people that are getting pulled into our category.
Dave, what is your favorite food and beer pairing of your own?
Of ours?
Of yours, yes.
You know, I love playing with desserts, and we've got a couple beers that pair really, really well. I'd say part of our breakfast stout series, we have Founders Breakfast Stout, which is this just decadent oatmeal stout brewed with Kona and Sumatra coffee and 2 different varieties of Belgian chocolate. And it's just so rich and full of flavor. It's just a great way to end a meal. I typically have a cup of coffee with a meal at the end of a meal. And this beer does that for me. It's just got huge coffee aromatics, and it truly is the consummate coffee beer. And it pairs so well, with, like a flourless chocolate cake, or on the other end, you can also pair it with like a vanilla creme brulee with just fresh fruit. So you can either have, complementary flavors or contrasting flavors, but either way, the beer works. That's a lot of fun. We've got one of our big sellers, Dirty Bastard Scotch Ale, pairs really well with Wild Game because it's got it's a big beer. It's 8.5% alcohol, and that's one thing we always try to do is match flavor to flavor. You don't want either the beer or the food to try to outshine each other. It's really a balancing act. And Dirty Bastard being 8.5%, it's a big, strong beer. It's got a huge malt backbone. 7 different varieties of caramel malts are in this beer, and it just pairs really well with big, strong flavors. So whether it's Wild Game or big hearty stew, it's a beer that just is very versatile. It's just a delicious combination.
Good fall beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Warm me up. Woo! So what is Dirty Bastard, or the Backwoods Bastard?
Backwoods Bastard? Backwoods Bastard is simply Dirty Bastard Scotch Ale aged in bourbon barrels. And so with the introduction of the bourbon barrels, once the distillers are finished with the barrels, they get sent up here, and we use them as quickly as we can. And then we will age our Dirty Bastard Scotch Ale in those barrels. And in doing so, there's always a bunch of residual bourbon that has been absorbed in the wood. And then we typically don't age anything just a month or so. We really believe in not taking any shortcuts in our entire process. So it may drop our efficiencies a little bit, but we've never looked at this business as far as efficiencies. It's really about the final product. We're a product-driven company. So as the Dirty Bastard ages in these bourbon barrels, you'll get those bourbon notes. And then after a little bit of time, you'll start getting more of the vanilla notes from the oak. But it completely changes that beer. Dirty Bastard is a great beer, on its own, but Backwoods Bastard just, holy, it's delicious.
Do you guys plan on, like with KBS, because that's such a limited release and everybody wants it when it comes out, and I understand the Canadian Breakfast Stout is kind of the same type of thing?
Yeah.
Do you guys plan on upping your output of those to make them a little more readily available, or do you plan on keeping them really exclusive?
I think there's I think a lot of people think that we do that on purpose. Quite honestly, it's really more of a matter of the fact that to maintain our volume with all of our flagship beers, our Centennial IPA, our Red's Rye, our Porter, our Pale Ale, the Dirty Bastard, we have to continually brew all of those beers. And when a beer like KBS comes out, it's a beer that is, it's very difficult to brew. I think we shut down almost for a week just brewing Kentucky Breakfast Stout this year. And every single year we make more. And I don't know if it's a problem, but every year more people want it.
They want it, definitely.
And so I hear that time and time again from customers and say, oh, last year I got 2 cases and this year I only got 1. Well, as a brewery, we're getting larger. We've expanded our distribution network. And I will let you know that Michigan gets the majority of, or the lion's share of that Kentucky Breakfast Stout. You'll never turn our back on our backyard. So, yeah, we sell a lot of KBS here in the state of Michigan.
And it goes fast.
It's gone from, when we first brewed it, it took us about 6 months to sell all of it. Because it's not a cheap beer.
Right.
And then the second year, it took us about 3 months to go through the entire batch. And every year it's gotten tighter and tighter, and then it got down to about 2 weeks, and now it's literally hours. And the new thing that our wholesalers have talked to us about is when they get to their warehouse, when their trucks are leaving to do their route, they've got 20 cars parked in their parking lot that are following their trucks. It's very odd. You know, it's a delicious beer, but at the end of the day, it is still just beer. Yeah, wonderful.
I also heard you had a line of 1,000 people waiting outside your door to taste it, though, too.
That's not true. There's 2,000 people.
Oh, 2,000. So somebody wasn't exaggerating enough.
No, I just learned over the weekend. During that day, we had 5,000 people visit us from the tap room, and what's very humbling too. I mean, people. It's not like these are people just locals. I mean, we have people fly in. We have people that schedule their vacation days around the release of this beer. But I went through our parking lot, last year, and I mean, it was all over. It was Maine, Vermont, Louisiana, North Dakota, obviously Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin. But it was amazing. Quite honestly, I would say most people were not from Michigan.
How many states do you distribute in?
Currently, we're in 23 states.
23.
Yeah. Typically, east of the Mississippi.
It's almost half.
Yeah. There are a few states east of the Mississippi that we don't distribute in.
Reason for? They just have stricter rules, or just don't?
No,
have
we just don't have the capacity yet to take
Not
care
yet,
of
but you
everyone.
plan on, as you grow, possibly expanding further?
No promises, but it would make sense.
Makes sense, yeah. Okay.
It's great when people start using the beer in recipes. I mean, I've got a breakfast stout cheesecake recipe. We use here on site we use a variety of hoppy beers for our beer cheese dip. We just started making Dirty Bastard mustard. We have a Centennial IPA honey mustard that's going to be released in the future. So our own barbecue sauce. So. We sell them on our website as well. But the Dirty Bastard mustard, that's just really taken off. We didn't really anticipate that. We just kind of did it as a fun side project. And we met some really cool people up north in Traverse City that were making a bunch of different mustards and jams and jellies and chutneys and salsas. And anyway, they're just super nice people. And we're like, we knew a bunch of people that I went to college with, and anyway, it was just part of it was a really good fit. We liked each other. We liked hanging out, and it was like we like doing business with people that we get along with.
It makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't. We always kind of joke. It doesn't really seem like work. It's just this is just our life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Honestly, we do this because we love it. I mean, whether or not we had this facility, this is just kind of a testament, I think, to our brewers, that our guys have so much passion, and not just the brewers. It's the bartenders, it's the guys in the deli, it's the guys working in the packaging hall. Everyone who's part of the founders family are so passionate about the end product, about the liquid, and it is a job, but it really doesn't feel like it.
Play mix.
Yeah,
that's the whole point of your life, though. You find a job you love to do, and it doesn't feel like work when you go to work.
Yeah,
you're happy.
Yeah, I mean this. Yeah, it's not a job. This is just my life. It works. Yeah.
Why beer?
Why beer? Oh, you got to get me all philosophical now.
Of course.
Honestly, I mean, this. I say this is the perfect life for me. At an early age, I was introduced to something so powerful as beer, and it had so much flavor, and it was so different from anything I'd ever experienced. It really was kind of this huge epiphany at a very early age, and growing up, I started realizing how important not just not just beer, but how it affects people socially. And I would say one of the hugest benefits of me taking this path with Mike is we started a little brewery, a little tiny brewery that made great beer, but we got to meet so many great people along the way. And this tap room has become our focus group. We get to meet just wonderful, crazy nice people, and they love our product, but they don't realize how much love is coming back. I mean, because we couldn't do what we love to do if it wasn't for them. And we get to meet all these just wonderful people that like great music, they like great food, and it just runs a gamut. I mean, it's not one specific type of group that we cater to. It's the craft beer enthusiasts are people that are socially conscious. They care about their community. They're actively involved. Typically, they have a fairly active lifestyle. So we participate in. We got kayakers, we got mountain bikers, we got hikers, campers. We have people that just love life. And anyway, the fact that we're this conduit that brings in all these different walks of life. And you come down to our tap room any day of the week, and it's we bring in all these different groups. They're young, they're old, they're rich, they're poor. Republican, Democrat, gay, straight. It's all these different ethnicities that come in, but we're the conduit that brings everyone together. And I don't know a good way to put it, but people don't realize how humbling that is as a brewery. We do this because this is what we love to do, but all those other things combined just make this like the perfect job. It doesn't suck.
Obviously.
We have 18 beers on tap, and I would say 10 of them are usually exclusive to our tap room. So this is our playground. This is where we can take some risks and play around with recipes. And this is where we get to experiment. And because we've got such a great loyal fan base that continues to come in here, and we want to hear it. I mean, we get immediate feedback anytime we put a new beer on tap, and it's amazing that because we've got a great relationship with our customers. I mean, they tell us immediately, "Oh, that beer's good. It's not great. It's not as good as this one." And then we can just kind of go back and go, "Oh, well, we use this hop for this one." And I mean, we don't make all of our decisions based on what happens out here, but. It really is kind of a nice gauge to see how beers are being received.
So what size test batch do you make when you throw it out here?
We're typically doing under 20 barrels, which is 40 kegs worth, which is quite a bit, but in honor of our staff. I mean, our brewing staff, those guys. They may not hit a bullseye the first time they brew a recipe, but it's in a pretty tight circle. I mean, these guys are so talented. Can't say enough of how passionate these guys are about what they do. Guys and girls.
You guys put IBUs and you put the amount of alcohol in every bottle, and the IBUs comes from the amount of hops basically that you use in each beer.
Yeah, international bitterness units is basically a way for us to judge how bitter a beer is going to be, and it's not 100% accurate because there's depending if hops are used during the bittering strike or the flavor strike or the aroma strike, and then we actually use hops during our fermentation process as well. And so Pale Ale, Centennial IPA, Red's Rye, All Day IPA, Devil Dancer, Double Trouble, those 7 beers, we don't just add hops during the brewing process, but also while those beers are fermenting away, we add additional hops which increase the aromatics. So the aroma on our beers is so important to us.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to taste our beer before it hits your lips. It's a phrase I always use.
Definitely.
So when you do a tasting, do you set that up so that you put out the lowest IBU first and then gradually ramp up, or
no? And I don't know. I thought everyone did it this way. It's just the way that I found success. But I will do. Sometimes it's easy to do. People say, "Oh, I'm going to do my lightest beer to my strongest beer," but as humans, we have a very limited palate. But other animals that their olfactory sense is so strong, or their hearing is so strong. For us, I think the olfactory sense is one of our most powerful senses, because I'm sure we've all experienced this. All of a sudden, you'll smell something, and it will immediately take you back 25 years to, whether it's smelling a
grandma's living room.
Yeah, grandma's living room, a tire burning, but all these different things and there are all these synapses that we don't unfortunately use, but all of a sudden you go, oh, that instantly brings you back to one point in time, and I think that's really interesting. So that's why the aromatics on all of our beers is really, really important. Like I said, we want you to taste our beer before it hits your lips. Some people even say 80% of all flavor comes through your olfactory sense.
Does that kind of coincide with wine, though? I mean, because wine, you really want to smell it before you taste it. It kind of...
I think they're just a bunch of pretentious assholes.
Think so? Yeah.
Can I make a request as a fan?
Sure.
Please don't expand your repertoire to a brew called Grandma's Living Room.
Grandma's Couch.
Grandma's Couch.
That's where we found Grandpa. So when we opened up here, we had rows A and row B, which were most of our original tanks, and still tanks that we had at our first location. And then rows C, D, E, and F were all new when we moved over here. Actually, row C had 5 30-barrel fermenters, and now we're brewing on, these are 176-barrel fermenters. And then in cellar 2, we have 330s and 440-barrel fermenters. Yeah, the liquid is actually getting recirculated from the bottom, and then it hits this plate that is really, really, really hot. And so when the malted, after the starch is converted out of the grain, it makes this really sweet liquid, and when it hits that, it almost caramelizes. It's so hot. Because our fermentation tanks need to be temperature controlled. Every tank, there's actually a tank within a tank. And so we have a refrigerant that wraps around all these tanks. They're all jacketed. And sometimes when it's really, really, really hot out, our glycol system, our refrigerant, has a hard time keeping up. Or at least we used to. Since we moved over here, we've made so many improvements. Everything is supersized to make for our capacity. But yeah, it used to be like if it was 95 degrees outside, our tanks would heat up, and there's very little we could do about it. But since we've moved over here, I mean, we've really tightened the ship. Brewing is just one thing. I mean, once the beer is brewed, then we have to let nature take its course, and these wonderful organisms called yeast start eating the sugars. We've essentially extracted the natural sugars out of malted barley. So we've converted the starch inside that grain to a sugar, made this beautiful sweet liquid, and then with the introduction of yeast, the yeast as a living organism has to eat, and it eats sugar, and the two byproducts are alcohol and carbon dioxide. And so between those combinations, along with the hops, is what makes beer. And so we're still a brewery that goes through a primary fermentation and a secondary fermentation, and there are some breweries that really pride themselves on being able to make a beer in 10 days. Like I said, we're more product driven. I mean, the yeast, the ale yeast that we use, and our process, I mean, we're around 21 days to brew one batch of beer. And every single day, every single tank is tested. I mean, And the truth is, sometimes beer, when it's only a day old, doesn't taste that great. But it's not. That's when we test beer. It's not like we're sipping it. It's going into our lab, and we're doing analysis on it. So here's the reality. Everything that happens in there, everything happens in tanks, you know, and there's very little movement. You know, occasionally someone will open up a valve and everything is hard pipe. This is your money shot. So when I came in, we were not packaging, so